Alright, so what we're looking at is the edge of my fell line one more time, and I'm going to try using a lighter yarn this time. So here we have a black background, and we are going to just show you how to do edges, and I'm not going to go all the way across because I'm using a contrasting yarn just to show you how this works, nothing more. Alright, so we are in our white forward shed, past the butterfly through. I had to decide whether or not I wanted to show you how to work your actual tail end here. When you put in your first shot, say if you are starting a new color or something like that, what you want to do is hopefully start in a place where your weft is going under the first warp thread. That way you can loop it back around that one thread and lay it back in the same shed. And I know this sounds weird because you'll hear a lot of people say, well, you don't ever want, two in the same shed. Well, this is one of the few places where that's perfectly alright. Or you can just turn it around that one warp thread and let it hang out the back. That works just fine too. So I'm not using my beater today, I'm just using my fingers, so what you see me doing when you look like I'm doing a little hen pecking sign, that's me beating in the weft with my fingers. So then we're going to change our shed, and we're going to go back around. So I'm going to show you two edges. One on the edge, which is most important, is your piece edge, and the other is the edge here in your warp threads, in your work that you will have to turn around as well. So as we're doing the turn, let's see if we can get this a little better here without falling off. There we go. Okay, so as we're doing the turn, you're going to put it into the shed. You have a black front shed, so you're going to go in, alright, and you can see the turn around one white warp thread, because that's where we ended. And you're going to push it down with your fingers, okay? And it's really simple. The warp thread shouldn't be bent to one way or the other by the pressure, and then just put it all the way over, and you see that I'm leaving about a 30-degree arc here, and that's the way I work. I don't do bubbles. They just never have worked for me. So, and here we have our tail again, if you can see that, tail again, in the same shed, but this is all going to beat down just fine. So beat, 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 okay, and that tail just disappears behind, nobody ever sees it. Okay, so now you have your warp thread right here, and you'll see that it's nice and straight. It's not bent one way or the other. Okay, so then we're going to change shed, so our white will be forward, and we're going to come back through, and this is the one that's most important. Whoops, well, at least it would be if I hadn't accidentally wrapped around my guide thread. So we're going to wrap around the guide thread, unwrap around the guide thread and come around that edge warp. And since we're only going over maybe a few inches, you just want to go all the way over. You still have your about 30-degree angle going on here, but we're going to work on the edge. So you see how the edge is sitting up? You're going to take your fingers just like you did before, and you're going to push it down so that it's sitting just against the warp thread. You don't want it pulling in, you don't want it bubbling out, you just want it sitting right across, right next to the warp thread. Then you're going to use the rest of your fingers, and you're going to pull that out. You're going to pull that down, and then use your beater fork or whatever and beat from there. Now the reason you want to do it that way is because when you change sheds, any slack that was left in here in this little edge piece here will actually be taken up when you change threads, and as well as when you go back one more time, going back the other way. For some reason, because when you beat those next rows in, they push the rows underneath them down tighter and tighter, and there needs to be enough slack in your weft so that when it does get tighter, that it won't start pulling in on your edge thread. So once again, you have an edge thread here. I'm going to push that down. You're going to adjust it so that you don't see any space, but it shouldn't be pulling in your warp thread either. And then pack it down with your fingers, and then go on across. And if you keep doing that, you get a nice straight edge.